Captain Jake Morrison was having a pretty good day, all things considered. The coffee on the Wandering Idiot was actually hot for once. Nobody had tried to arrest his crew at the Galactic Council Trade Summit yet, and he'd managed to sit through 2 hours of intergalactic commerce presentations without falling asleep. Sure, his ship was named after a particularly brutal performance review from his old Navy commander, but Jake had learned to embrace life's little ironies. Then Ambassador Flix took the stage, and things got interesting. Flix was what humans diplomatically called avian adjacent, which meant he looked like a 6-foot-tall parakeet who'd been stressed into premature molting. He wheeled out a containment unit that would have made a nuclear facility jealous. 6 layers of transparent shielding, radiation warnings in 40 languages, and a biohazard symbol so large it was probably visible from orbit. "Esteemed delegates," Flix chirped, his voice cracking with nervousness. "I present the mortis berry, the deadliest botanical specimen known to galactic science. Exposure to even 0.001 milligrams of its juice causes immediate cellular breakdown, catastrophic organ failure, and death within 45 seconds. It has eliminated 17 civilizations who attempted to harvest it, 14 scientific expeditions, and my predecessor." The assembled aliens gasped appropriately. Someone in the back fainted. Jake leaned forward in his seat, squinting at the holographic display. The berry was about the size of a marble, deep purple with little red spots, and had a distinctive 5-pointed stem pattern. "Huh," he said, loud enough that several nearby delegates turned to look at him. "My grandma puts those in her stuffing." The silence that followed could have suffocated a star. Ambassador Flix's head rotated a full 180 degrees. "I'm sorry, what?" Jake stood up, because apparently his mouth had decided today was a great day to cause an intergalactic incident. "Yeah, those are spiceberries. Well, that's what we call them. My grandmother makes this Thanksgiving stuffing with cranberries, chestnuts, and those little purple guys. Gives it a kind of peppery kick." High Chancellor Vroom emerged from his hover platform like a slug oozing up a particularly disappointing sidewalk. He was roughly the size and shape of a beanbag chair, with eye stalks that quivered with bureaucratic outrage. "Human, you are claiming that your species consumes the mortis berry. The mortis berry. The fruit that carries a galactic death warrant for mere proximity. I mean, we don't call it that because that would be a pretty depressing menu item," Jake said. "But yeah, if that's the one from Kepler 442b, we've been importing those for like 30 years. They grow wild in the southern continent." Dr. Pip, the council's xenobiologist, a nervous creature that resembled a praying mantis wearing reading glasses, began hyperventilating into a paper bag. "Impossible. My entire dissertation. 300 years of research. I won the Quantum Biology Prize for proving nothing carbon-based could survive mortis exposure." Beth Kowalski, Jake's engineer, pulled out her phone. She was the kind of person who could fix a warp drive with duct tape and sheer spite, and she had the family recipe collection to prove she came from a long line of people who refused to accept reality's limitations. "Oh man, my Babsia makes the best spiceberry pierogi. Look, I've got pictures." She held up her phone. The aliens leaned away as if the screen itself might be contagious. "That's my cousin's wedding," Beth continued, scrolling. "See? Spiceberry cake. And here's the pickled ones we make for Easter. Oh, and this is my uncle's spiceberry wine. Nearly blinded my dad, but that was more about Uncle Steve's distillation process than the berries." Chancellor Vroom's eye stalks drooped so low they nearly touched the floor. "Pickled. You preserve them in acidic solutions for extended consumption." "Well, yeah," Beth said. "Otherwise they go bad." "Go bad," Vroom repeated faintly. "The galaxy's most lethal organism can spoil." Dr. Pip's paper bag breathing intensified. "Do you understand what you're telling us? The mortis berry doesn't just kill on contact. Its toxic compounds break down molecular bonds. It's been theorized as a base component for planet-killing weapons. The Zorgoth Empire tried to weaponize it and accidentally destroyed their own homeworld." Jake scratched his chin. "Was their homeworld's atmosphere methane-based?" "Yes. Why?" "That explains it. The compounds break down differently in methane. You'd get runaway chain reactions. Oxygen-nitrogen atmospheres like ours? Totally stable. We did a whole study when we started commercial cultivation. Lost some lab equipment, learned some lessons, moved on." "Lost some lab equipment," Vroom echoed. "Learned some lessons, moved on." "I mean, there was also that incident where a shipping container broke open at the Denver spaceport, and they had to evacuate 3 terminals. But that was mostly about the paperwork," Beth added helpfully. "The berries just rolled around for a while. Some teenagers ate a few on a dare. They were fine. Little bit of stomach trouble, but Brad had also eaten gas station sushi that morning, so we couldn't really isolate variables. Ambassador Flix had gone completely still, which for a bird person was unsettling. Your species uses the galaxy's deadliest poison as seasoning and feeds it to teenagers. Who survive? Brad specifically didn't survive the sushi, Jake corrected. But yeah, the berries were fine. Dr. Pip dropped his paper bag. I need to sit down. You are sitting down, someone pointed out. Then I need to sit down more. Jake could see where this was heading. In his experience, alien bureaucrats had two settings: paperwork paralysis or demanding empirical proof. Since Vroom's eye stalks were starting to regain their rigidity, he was clearly shifting into the latter mode. You know what? Jake said, walking toward the containment unit. Let's just clear this up right now. 14 security guards immediately pointed weapons at him. Flix made a sound like a smoke detector dying. Captain Morrison, I must insist you step away from the apocalypse fruit, Vroom said, his voice climbing an octave. Look, we can spend 6 months arguing about human biology, or I can eat a handful of these things, and we can all move on with our lives. Jake tapped the containment controls. How do you open this? There's like 40 buttons. None of them, Flix shrieked. None of the buttons open it because no one should ever open it. Beth was suddenly at Jake's elbow, because she had a terrible habit of enabling his worst decisions. It's the green sequence, top left, then the safety override on the bottom right panel. You'll need authorization codes, though. How do you know that, Doctor? Pip demanded. I'm an engineer. Overbuilt containment systems offend me personally. 5 minutes of steadily escalating panic later, Jake had a handful of spiceberries. They smelled faintly sweet, like someone had mixed black pepper with raspberries. The entire council had retreated to what they clearly considered a safe distance, roughly 40 feet, and behind a hastily erected emergency barrier. Jake popped 3 berries into his mouth and chewed slowly, maintaining eye contact with Chancellor Vroom the entire time. They had a nice crunch, a little tartness, and that familiar peppery aftertaste that made his sinuses clear. 45 seconds until cellular breakdown, Dr. Pip announced, his voice shaking as he consulted a timer. 30 seconds, 20 seconds. Jake swallowed. Anybody want some? I've got extras. The barrier spontaneously gained another 6 feet of height. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3. Dr. Pip looked up from his timer. You're not dead. Correct, Jake said. That was generally my hypothesis going in. This is impossible. The toxins should have weight. Dr. Pip pulled out a scanning device that looked like a tricorder had a baby with a medical textbook. Your stomach acid. What is your stomach pH? I don't know. Stomachish? Its reading is 1.5. That's more corrosive than industrial cleaning solutions. How are you not digesting yourself? Beth pulled out her phone again. Oh, I can answer this one. Humans have this mucus lining thing. Pretty neat evolutionary workaround. Anyway, you guys want to see me make a smoothie? Because I'm thinking spiceberry smoothie. No, said approximately 40 voices in unison. Cool. I'm gonna do it anyway. Beth headed toward the Wandering Idiot's galley. 10 minutes later, the Galactic Council's finest scientific equipment was arranged around Beth's blender like they were monitoring a nuclear reactor. Doctor Pip had requisitioned sensors that probably cost more than Jake's ship. Beth added a handful of berries, some ice, a banana, and what she claimed was yogurt but looked suspiciously like something from the back of the ship's fridge. The blender roared to life. The toxin readings are spiking, Doctor, Pip said, his voice climbing with academic hysteria. Lethal concentrations. Military-grade lethality. Why is she adding protein powder? Gains, Beth explained, pouring the purple sludge into a cup. She took a long drink. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Little bit tangy today. The scanner and Doctor. Pip's hands started making sounds it probably wasn't designed to make. Her metabolic readings. The berry toxins are breaking down into basic nutrients. Her digestive system is treating a planet killer like it's a vitamin supplement. Technically, it is a good source of fiber, Beth said. Chancellor Vroom had gone a color that Jake's universal translator helpfully labeled as existential dread gray. Dr. Pip. In your professional opinion, what does this mean? Doctor, Pip set down his 9. Scanner with shaking appendages. It means humans have a digestive system that's more dangerous than most weapons-grade acids. It means Earth's death world classification might be underrated. And it means, he paused, his voice breaking slightly, it means my dissertation is worthless, and I've wasted 300 years of my life. If it helps, Jake offered. I thought the title was very creative. Mortis Berry, the unassailable proof of nature's cruelty, really rolls off the tongue. It did not help. Doctor. Pip did what any academic does when faced with a career-ending crisis. He dove into research with the manic energy of someone who desperately needed reality to start making sense again. For the next 3 hours, while the council took what Vroom called a collective moment of reflection and what Jake called hiding in the bathroom, Dr. Pip excavated humanity's entire historical database regarding spiceberries. The results were somehow worse than the smoothie incident. Captain Morrison, Dr. Pip said, his voice having achieved a pitch that could probably shatter glass. I need you to explain this recipe from Earth year 1347. It's called Spiceberry and Venison Feast for the Duke's wedding. The instructions include: use 2 bushels of spiceberries, simmer for 4 hours, and serve to approximately 200 guests. Jake shrugged. Sounds like a pretty standard medieval feast to me. 2 bushels. That's enough mortis berry concentrate to sterilize a small moon, and you served it at a wedding. Well, yeah. Weddings are important. You want to bring out the good stuff. Beth leaned over to look at the historical records on Dr. Pip's datapad. Oh hey, check this out. Colonial-era shipping manifest from 1756. Says here a cargo vessel rejected a shipment of spiceberries for being, quote, disappointingly mild and unfit for sale. They dumped 3 tons of them in the harbor. Doctor. Pip made a sound like a tea kettle having a nervous breakdown. They rejected the deadly cargo for not being deadly enough? Different market standards back then, Jake said. People wanted more kick. Honestly, the really potent ones don't come around anymore. Modern cultivation has bred them to be milder for mainstream appeal. My grandma complains about it constantly. Your grandmother complains that the galaxy's most toxic substance isn't toxic enough. She's very particular about her recipes. Doctor. Pip scrolled further, and his entire body went rigid. No. This cannot be real. Earth year 1952. A cookbook titled Wholesome Family Meals. There's an entire chapter on spiceberry desserts. Suitable for ages 5 and up. The 50s were a weird time for food, Beth admitted. Pretty sure that's also when we invented the Jell-O salad, which is arguably more dangerous than any berry. There's a recipe here called Spiceberry Surprise Birthday Cake. Dr. Pip continued, his voice taking on the quality of someone reading their own autopsy. Report. The surprise appears to be that everyone survives eating it. There are photographs, children's birthday parties, with the mortis berry, decorated with little candles. Jake looked at the photos. Oh man, that's vintage. Look at those decorations. We should bring that style back. There's a testimonial, Dr. Pip whispered, from a mother named Margaret Henderson. She writes, my son Tommy had 12 friends over for his birthday. The spiceberry cake was such a hit that 3 boys asked to take slices home. I'll definitely be making this recipe again. She gave it 5 stars. Good for Margaret, Beth said. Dr. Pip set down the datapad like it had personally betrayed him. I found 43 centuries of continuous human consumption records. 43 centuries. You've been eating the mortis berry since before most civilizations discovered fire. There are cave paintings that appear to show hunter-gatherers harvesting them. They probably taste-tested a lot of stuff back. Then, Jake said, trial and error. You know how it goes. Yes, but most species' trial and error with deadly toxins ends with error. Permanent error. Fatal error. Dr. Pip gestured wildly at his datapad. Do you know what happened when the Zinthar civilization encountered the mortis berry? Their entire exploratory team died within minutes. They classified the planet as uninhabitable and never returned. Meanwhile, humans apparently had a robust import-export economy going by year 2 of contact. Chancellor Vroom had returned from his moment of reflection, looking like he'd aged several decades. Dr. Pip, please tell me you've found something, anything, that makes sense of this situation. I have found that humans have been casually consuming apocalypse-grade biological weapons since the Bronze Age, and consider this normal, Dr. Pip said flatly. I have also found a 1,970 seconds advertisement for something called Spiceberry Blast cereal that was marketed to children with the slogan, Start your morning with a bang. The cereal was discontinued, but only because of low sales, not mass casualties. Low sales, Vroom repeated. Apparently it made the milk turn purple and parents found it off-putting. Jake nodded. Yeah, I remember my mom mentioning that stuff. Said it was actually pretty good, just looked weird. Dr. Pip buried his face in his appendages. I need a new career. Junior Ambassador Trill had been remarkably quiet throughout the entire disaster. which was unusual because she was normally the type to ask 14 follow-up questions about everything. She was a mammalian species that looked like someone had given a very fluffy otter both opposable thumbs and severe anxiety, and she'd only been assigned to the council 6 months ago. Unlike the rest of the diplomatic corps, she hadn't yet learned that silence was the appropriate response to humans doing literally anything. She approached Jake's table with the kind of determined waddle that suggested she'd made a decision that was either brilliant or career-ending, possibly both. "Captain Morrison," she said, her voice bright with the kind of enthusiasm that made seasoned bureaucrats nervous. "I've been reviewing the data, and I think we're looking at this situation entirely wrong." Chancellor Vroom's eye stalks swiveled toward her with the speed of a man watching someone step on a landmine. "Junior Ambassador, perhaps this isn't the time for, with respect, Chancellor, this is exactly the time." Trill pulled out a data tablet and projected a holographic presentation that looked suspiciously well prepared for something she'd supposedly just thought of. "The Council has been trying to solve the Mortisberry problem for 4,000 years. We've lost ships, outposts, and multiple research stations to contamination events. We've classified entire planetary systems as no-go zones because of Mortisberry infestations." "Yes, which is why we maintain the containment protocols," Vroom said, slowly, like he was explaining basic concepts to a child. "Protocols that cost the Galactic Council approximately 4.7 billion credits annually," Trill continued, pulling up financial charts. "And that's just for the Mortisberry. We spend even more on other toxic substance management, hazardous world quarantines, and biochemical disaster response." Meanwhile, she gestured at Jake and Beth, who were sharing the rest of the spiceberry smoothie. "Humans have been handling this stuff like it's basil for 4,000 years without incident." "Doctor," Pip looked up from his existential crisis. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that if humans can safely process the galaxy's deadliest toxin through their digestive system, they might be uniquely qualified to help us with our little poison problem." Trill's presentation shifted to show various galactic hazard zones, the Cabraxian waste fields, the plutonium marshes of Sector 7, the entire Gamma Quintus system that we abandoned after that chemical spill in 3045. What if humans could clean these sites? Ambassador Flix, who had been quietly rocking in the corner since the smoothie incident, spoke up. "You want to send humans into toxic waste sites? The same humans who eat the Mortisberry for fun." "For seasoning," Jake corrected. "Nobody's eating it for fun. That would be weird." "The physiology makes sense," Dr. Pip said, his scientific curiosity temporarily overriding his despair. "If human digestive systems can break down Mortisberry compounds into basic nutrients, they might be able to process other toxic substances similarly. Their metabolic flexibility could be unprecedented." Beth raised her hand. "Quick question. Are we talking like hazmat suit cleanup work, or are you planning to feed us the toxic waste directly? Because I feel like that's an important distinction for contract negotiations." "Hazmat suits," Trill said quickly. "Definitely hazmat suits. Though, your digestive capabilities would provide an additional safety margin that other species don't have. If there's a breach, you'd have substantially higher survival rates. So we're talking danger pay," Beth said. "I like where this is going." Chancellor Vroom's entire body seemed to deflate, which for a slug-like creature was particularly dramatic. "Let me understand this correctly. You want the Galactic Council to hire humans Deathworlders, who treat galactic superweapons as condiments to handle our most hazardous waste management problems." "Yes," Trill said firmly, "and I think we should pay them extremely well for it, because the alternative is continuing to spend billions of credits on containment systems that keep failing anyway." Jake leaned back in his chair, trying very hard not to smile. This was going better than he'd hoped. He'd come to this summit expecting to maybe negotiate better trade rates on titanium, and instead they were essentially being offered a contract to clean up the galaxy's messes. "That's an interesting proposition, Junior Ambassador, but I think humanity might need something else in return." Vroom's eye stalks drooped preemptively. "What do you want?" "Stop classifying Earth as a quarantine-level death world," Jake said. "The rating is killing our tourism industry and making trade negotiations unnecessarily complicated. Every time a human ship approaches a station, half the docking crews flee in terror. It's getting old. Your planet has organisms that consider the Mortisberry a dietary supplement," Vroom pointed out. "The classification exists for good reason." "Sure, but it's also preventing legitimate business relationships. We've got resources, technology, and apparently a unique biological advantage that the galaxy needs. But nobody wants to deal with us because our planet has the same hazard rating as an active supernova." Jake gestured at Beth. Case in point, my engineer here invented a new plasma coil design that's 30% more efficient than current galactic standards. But she can't get patent approval because Earth tech is automatically flagged as potentially weaponizable. Beth nodded enthusiastically. It's just a better coil design. It's not my fault that our safety standards assume everything might explode, so we build stuff that doesn't explode. That's good engineering, not weapons development. We'd also appreciate if trading vessels stopped jumping to emergency warp the second we hail them, Jake added. It makes simple cargo transfers take 6 times longer than necessary, and honestly, it's kind of rude. Trill was nodding along, taking notes on her tablet. These seem like reasonable requests, especially if we're establishing a formal working relationship. Chancellor, the Council has been looking for a solution to the hazardous waste crisis for decades. If humans can provide that solution, some diplomatic concessions seem like a fair trade. Vroom looked around at the round, assembled council members, most of whom were still recovering from the demonstration. This is highly irregular. So is watching someone drink a mortisberry smoothie and ask for a second glass, Trill countered. Dr. Pip raised an appendage. If I may, from a scientific standpoint, establishing formal relations with humanity could provide invaluable research opportunities. We clearly don't understand their biology as well as we thought. That knowledge gap could be dangerous if left unexplored. Fine, Vroom said, his voice heavy with the exhaustion of someone who'd aged several decades in a single afternoon. We'll downgrade Earth's classification from quarantine level to inadvisable for vacation purposes. And we'll draft a preliminary contract for hazardous waste consultation services. But his eye stalks fixed on Jake with surprising intensity. This is conditional on your cooperation with safety briefings, contamination protocols, and regular biological monitoring. Deal, Jake said, extending his hand. Vroom looked at the offered hand like it might be another trick. What are you doing? It's called a handshake. It's how humans seal agreements. Your species seals agreements through physical contact. It's symbolic, Jake said. Don't overthink it. Very reluctantly, Vroom extended one of his appendages and touched Jake's hand briefly before recoiling. There, agreed. Now please stop eating the apocalypse fruit in public spaces. The paperwork took another 2 hours, which was actually pretty fast by Galactic Council standards. Jake suspected they were rushing things along just to get the humans off station before they could demonstrate any other horrifying biological capabilities. Fair enough. As Jake and Beth packed up to leave, he figured it would be polite to offer parting gifts. It was a human diplomatic tradition, and if they were going to be working with the Council long-term, might as well start building some goodwill. Hey, before we head out, Jake said, pulling several jars from his bag. We brought some spiceberry jam from Earth. Thought you folks might want to try it, in a controlled setting. The reaction was immediate and predictable. Approximately 30 delegates simultaneously took 3 steps backward. One of them triggered a personal shield generator. Ambassador Flicks made a sound like a squeaky toy being crushed. You brought more of it? Vroom's eye stalks vibrated with something between horror and resignation. You just casually transport weaponized berries in your personal luggage? It's jam, Beth said. You spread it on toast. It's not like we're hauling around antimatter. Although we do have some antimatter in the cargo bay for the reactor, Jake added helpfully. But that's properly contained. The jam is just in regular jars. Dr. Pip looked at the jars like they were ticking bombs. Regulation storage containers, I assume? Triple sealed? Magnetically isolated? Mason jars, Beth said. My aunt makes them every summer. She uses the ones with the little gingham lids because she says presentation matters. Gingham, Doctor, Pip repeated faintly. The substance that destroyed the Zorgath Empire is being stored in decorative glass containers with gingham lids. Well, yeah, anything else would be overkill, Jake said. The council chamber had achieved a quality of silence that was almost impressive. Jake looked around at the assembled aliens, all of whom were treating the jam jars like unexploded ordnance. Finally, Junior Ambassador Trill waddled forward. I'll take one. Trill? No, Vroom said. Chancellor, if we're going to work with humans, we need to start understanding their culture. That includes, she swallowed hard, their food. She looked at Jake with the expression of someone about to do something either very brave or very stupid. But you have to taste it first. Deal, Jake said. He unscrewed one of the jars, the pop of the seal making half the sulls. Council flinch, and dipped his finger in. The jam was thick, deep purple, and smelled like someone had mixed berries with peppercorns and just a hint of cinnamon. He licked it off his finger. Oh man, this is the good batch. Aunt Marie really nailed it this year. Trill watched him carefully for 15 seconds, presumably waiting for him to collapse. When he remained upright and alive, she tentatively reached out and took the jar with both paws. "Thank you, Captain Morrison. I'll try it when I'm somewhere with medical facilities nearby." "That's the spirit," Beth said encouragingly. "Start small, maybe on a cracker." As they walked back toward the wandering idiot, Jake felt pretty good about how things had turned out. They'd upgraded Earth's diplomatic status, secured a lucrative contract for hazardous waste consultation, and possibly made an actual friend on the council, all because of his grandmother's stuffing recipe. "Captain," their ship's AI chimed in as they reached the scanned airlock. "We have 17 incoming messages from council representatives requesting interviews about human biology. Also, Doctor, Pip would like to know if he can come to Earth to study human digestive systems in their natural habitat." "Tell him sure, but he's buying dinner," Jake said. "And somebody should probably warn him about hot sauce before he gets here." Beth snorted. "You think the spiceberry thing freaked them out? Wait until they learn about ghost peppers. One apocalypse at a time, Beth." Behind them, through the station windows, they could see Dr. Pip frantically taking readings of the jam jar with increasingly sophisticated equipment. Trill was sitting at her desk, staring at the jar like it was a puzzle she was determined to solve. And Chancellor Vroom was already drafting new protocols, because if there was one thing bureaucrats loved, it was creating forms for unprecedented situations. "Doctor." Pip's voice crackled over Jake's communicator. "Captain Morrison, one more question. Your ship's technical specifications list your cooling system fluid as dihydrogen monoxide with a boron carbide suspension. That compound is classified as a Class 7 industrial corrosive. Why is it in your life support systems?" Jake and Beth exchanged glances. "Should we tell him?" Beth asked. "Nah," Jake said, closing the airlock. "Let him figure it out. He's a scientist. He likes mysteries." As the wandering idiot undocked and turned toward Earth, Jake pulled up the ship's music library and selected something appropriately triumphant. In the cargo hold, 3 tons of spiceberries sat in regular shipping containers, ready to be delivered to distributors across human space. Just another Tuesday in the life of a Death World species that had somehow convinced the galaxy they were the reasonable ones. Behind them, Dr. Pip's scanners had just identified the cooling system compound. His screaming was probably audible from 3 decks away. Jake turned up the music and headed home, where the most dangerous thing in the galaxy was waiting. Sunday dinner at his grandmother's house, where she'd definitely have opinions about how the diplomatic mission went, and whether he'd remembered to bring back any good recipes from the aliens. Somehow, he suspected the Galactic Council was the easier audience.